Have you ever wondered how much forgiveness is too much forgiveness? This question is not as straightforward as it might seem. You see, forgiveness is a tricky business. It's one of those things that sounds so easy when you say it out loud, but proves to be a mountain when you actually try to do it. Especially when the person in question has deeply wronged us. What if I told you there's a story that might make you see forgiveness in a new light? Let's dive into a story that might change your perspective on forgiveness. Once upon a time, there was a king who decided to settle accounts with his servants. Now, this was no ordinary king, but a ruler known for his fairness and justice. His servants, too, were diverse, coming from all walks of life, each bearing their own unique circumstances. Among them, one servant stood out, not for his virtues, but for the enormous debt he owed the king. This was not a debt born out of necessity, nor was it one that could easily be repaid. It was a debt so vast, it dwarfed the combined wealth of the entire kingdom. Yet the king, in his infinite wisdom, called upon this servant not with wrath, but with a sense of fairness and justice. The servant, realizing the gravity of his situation, fell to his knees, pleading for mercy. His pleas, filled with genuine remorse and desperation, touched the king's heart. The servant pleaded for mercy, and the king, moved by his pleas, forgave him his debt. You'd think that servant, having just been forgiven a massive debt, would be full of gratitude and mercy himself, right? But here's where the story takes a surprising turn. No sooner had he left the king's presence, he runs into a fellow servant who owed him a mere 100 silver coins. A sum, by all standards, insignificant compared to the enormous debt he himself had just been pardoned. You'd imagine he'd extend the same mercy he'd received to his fellow servant, but alas, that was not the case. Instead of showing compassion, he chose to grab his fellow by the throat, demanding immediate repayment. Despite the pleas and cries for patience, he refused to forgive the debt and had his fellow servant thrown into prison until he could pay him back. This behavior, so starkly contrasting the mercy he himself had just experienced, is shocking to say the least. It's a sharp twist in the tale that leaves us puzzled and, quite frankly, disappointed. Here was a man who had been shown such incredible grace, and yet he had no grace to spare for his fellow servant. It's a startling reminder of the human capacity for hypocrisy and how quickly we can forget the kindness shown to us when we're put in a position of power. The king, upon hearing of the servant's actions, was furious. The king called the servant and said, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. Should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you?" In the king's voice, we perceive a profound disappointment, a deep sense of betrayal. It ripples through his words, the echo of a promise unfulfilled. The servant, who had been shown the greatest mercy, had failed to extend that same grace to another. The king's anger is not a petty one. It's not rooted in a desire for revenge or retribution. It springs from his understanding of a broken promise, a missed opportunity for kindness, for compassion. The servant had been given a chance to walk a path of mercy, and he chose not to. The king's decision to punish the servant is not an act of cruelty. It's a statement, a clear message that actions have consequences. It's a call to responsibility, a reminder that we are all interconnected, that our actions impact the lives of others. But the story doesn't end with the king's anger or the servant's punishment. It extends beyond that, reaching into the very heart of what it means to be human. It's about mercy and forgiveness, about the capacity we all have to extend grace to others, even when they've wronged us. The king's words serve as a reminder, a moral compass to guide us through our interactions with others. They're an invitation to show mercy, to forgive, to let go of the resentment and anger that can so easily cloud our judgment. It's a lesson about the power of forgiveness, about the transformative potential of mercy. It's about recognizing that the capacity to forgive is not a sign of weakness, but a mark of strength. It's about understanding that forgiveness is not about forgetting the wrongs done to us, but about choosing to rise above them. So, my friends, how much forgiveness is too much? Or perhaps is there even such a thing as too much forgiveness?